Thank you, everyone. Great presentations. Poppy, we heard before the break about Natural England's piloting of the owned autonomy principle that came out of the Corrie review, the theme being to improve the permitting landscape for nature recovery. We also know that EA are running a pilot in the same vein. Does the MMO, as part of this wider process, is there any thinking around how owned autonomy might help deliver environmental objectives within the plan?
Good question. So I do believe the MMO are involved within the EA with the kind of permitting, restoration with the regulation and that kind of thing. I can't say personally myself, I'm not sitting any closely within that, but I do know that the MMO are involved through that, through various within the marine crime team and also marine licensing as well. If I've answered your question there, actually.
No, that's a really good question. Yeah, lots of good discussions going about that, which is the pace has to quicken, doesn't it, for nature's recovery, so we need to remove those barriers. So, I'm just going to sneak in with a quick question. It's to Natalie, really. You talked about using drones for the data collection. Are you somehow kind of just confirming, kind of correlating it with your old traditional ways of doing it, or is there going to be some data wobble as you get perhaps better at that technology?
Yeah, so I didn't actually mention during the talk there. Essentially, we've been exploring the use of drones because we were keen to get better records. And we actually found that with those, as opposed to boat surveys that we would typically do to monitor the seabirds, there was a 50% increase in the accuracy and number of counts that we could make. So the intention moving forward is very much to use drones to do all of our counts. Essentially it's a great way of monitoring seabirds as opposed to using a boat where you're kind of looking up. It's quite hard to actually do those counts of lost species and see into those nests and get.
Will you reevaluate your old records if you're saying will you be adding some sort of correction to previous historical records?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Dave Hara at Benton that question because I honestly don't know. I will definitely suggest it to him.
Well, I don't know how robust the science is, but yeah, it's easier, isn't it?
Can I just ask, are you using AI then to look at the actual images?
I'm not entirely sure because it's basically it's being led by Oxford University in collaboration with our Benton team, so I don't know. I could certainly have a chat with Dave and get you details and kind of let you know in the break. I'm more than happy to, but I'm not entirely sure.
I imagine it's something for the future anyway, sorry, just thought
So the question was about AI technology and things like that. I know we've had some difficulties and the technology is not quite there for some of the things we've got, but yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's good. Rodney.
For Natalie, are there any evidence of any dietary shifts in any of your seabird populations, or, for example, numbers of sand eels being brought back per feeding trip, anything like that? That might be linked to changes in food availability.
So I believe we are looking at that, and it's kind of it's nuanced because it's not just about availability but accessibility of food. I do understand that kind of is being explored. Certainly with sand eels, we're looking at that in quite a lot of detail, especially the closure of the fisheries. But we anticipate that it'll take about 5 years to actually understand that full picture. So yeah, ongoing.
On the right.
Hi, I'm Becca from the Seven Estuary Partnership. So I'm based in Wales, and I used to work in West Wales, and we knew that about 80% of the shellfish that was landed was taken for export, so it was going off to France and Spain. So just a question about fish here. Your numbers are all for what's been landed. Does that include then everything that's going for export, or is that a separate number which could potentially be much higher? Thank you.
So say the landing at Bridlington, a lot of the landings at Bridlington are then for export to the continent. Now, political changes in the last 10 years has certainly made that a bit more challenging for the industry. But yeah, that would account for any landings which come onto the quayside of those ports. But like I say, not necessarily catching no pun intended, catching everything that's caught within the region, because it might have gone to a nearby port, even a port on the continent by an international vessel.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it, local food, because they take the cockles in the wash, and it's landing on a beach next to a town of Boston, and probably 99% of the population of Boston have never tasted a cockle. They will end up in Korea and places like that, and it is a shame to lose that connection. But, yeah.
Is a question about the data and the input, probably around planning more than anything. So given that we know most of the fishing, or a significant amount of fishing in our coast, won't be from the vessels or the ports that are being landed, a lot of it will be Scottish, how is that going to be taken into account in terms of the planning? Is that a national picture? And you've also already got a challenge of fishery management plans, other bylaw restrictions. Is it effectively just adding another layer of complexity into how we fish? On the back of that, how is it going to be that fishing isn't just going to be the thing that's seen as can be moved? And that typically has, I think we've learned, that has other consequences. When you put more and more restrictions in place, it just puts pressure somewhere else because you just move the problem around. So it's a little bit about that data analysis and actually, are we doing it purposefully, or are we just using fishing as a variable and causing more problems?
No, thank you. That's a very good question. Also, very well, like with the light and as well. So I'm hooked. But no, you make a very good point. So the fishing, all the fishing aspects and sphere is very interesting in relation to with the marine plans. So obviously, as you mentioned, they have the marine fisheries management plans, for example, which kind of I almost see as being how marine plans kind of work in terms of for development, as I'm saying, wanting to place those sustainable development, using the marine plans to make sure it's sustainable when you're making decisions for that. I see the fisheries management plans being used for that for fisheries, but we don't want to not be considering fisheries when we're also considering, as you say, marine spatial planning. They need to be considered in development, making sure they're not getting pushed out. So we do have fisheries marine plan policies and specific people within the team that make sure that they are bringing in all that various evidence. The engagement points are very key. I know through like the Crown Estate and the Marine Delivery Route Map and MS Pride, fishery industry have been there to be really able to vocalise what their thoughts are, their comments, opinions are, so to try and make sure that they're not getting pushed out to the side. So essentially, I suppose, coming back to the marine plans themselves, we have those fisheries marine plan policies to make sure that they're getting represented in that respect. But then I also think because they've got the fisheries management plans as well, covering the whole, really going into all the fine detail about all the, I'm not a fisheries expert myself, but all the quota and the catch and all the various different fish species mean that they are, it's complex, but trying to all bring it together. Yes.
Can I just...
Yes, please. Yeah, go for it.
No, thanks very much. Yeah, so a point on that, like you say, to do with the kind of multiple layers of regulation, but also the need to share the space with offshore wind and offshore energy and everything else that's going on, that coastal development, is that even though, I mean, I said in my talk that we've got this diversity of fisheries in our region, actually what we've seen in the last 20 years is certainly a reduced diversity of fisheries in the region. So certainly on the inshore fisheries, we've got this contraction of the availability of different gears and things like that, and the vessels have become much more specialised. Now, in some ways, that might be seen as a good thing because it means they're kind of focusing their effort, but it also means that you get this hyper sort of intensity of certain gears. So things like the static gear fisheries become the real be-all and end-all for a lot of the inshore fishery. Now, it might be considered that it's maybe less destructive than bottom-towed fisheries, but what it also means is there's an inability to then diversify in the face of other problems. So where you've got then competition which might displace fishers from an area because of offshore energy and things like that, it means that they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They just don't have the means to diversify and take account of new opportunities or different opportunities. So yeah, it's that real balance. And this is where marine planning is that really important thing, because it can also help to future-proof and kind of think forward and go, right, what is the future of this fishery? Can we leave some wriggle room to allow it to diversify? And then just, sorry, I know I'm monopolising the thing, but this is where something that Rodney alluded to and Adrian's been working on as well, is that idea of putting sensors in pots, that collaboration between industry and scientists and conservation and everything else working together to build these remote monitoring stations using fishing gear. It helps to get that information to flow back and forth between the various sensors and various partners, but it also means that fishermen are engaging in some ways it allows them to access another revenue stream. If we can use those there for charters and things like that, and data collection, it means that they're not solely reliant on a very narrow income stream. And again, it helps them ride over some of these kind of bumps in the road.
Thank you. Got a last question? Yeah, we'll take that one there.
Hi there, my name's Rebecca, I'm from Natural England. So just thinking about the East Marine Plan, and you mentioned about monitoring, just thinking about the different policies and themes that you'd outlined, have you got any ideas about how you'd be monitoring the successfulness of the Marine Plan once it's implemented?
Yeah, so basically what we do is we have our marine plan policies, and they're all going to have various different intents, like what is their aim and what are they trying to achieve. So what we then do is we have indicators attached to those plan policies, which we then draw on secondary data. So from Natural England, for example, Environment Agency, we're happy to get data as much as possible to then be able to draw those in to show for those indicators, to be able to having enough evidence and data to use those indicators to show if they're having their if that policy is having their effect. We also do run survey questions, because if there are, for example, data gaps or something like that, we need to then be able to go out and try and collect the data ourselves. So asking people, you're using this plan policy, how are you finding it? Are you cumulative effects, for example? Are you noticing that there are various different spatial squeezes in this area, East Marine Plan area, and so on? And then we're collecting that data, analysing it ourselves, and going on there to basically try and create and draw together this whole picture of what's going on in the East Marine Plan area. So various different threads which we try to pull on to create that picture.
Thank you very much. Going to draw it to a close there with a few things to do now, so please join me in thanking our speakers.